Good evening, class. We're going to be looking at lesson 5.2, which goes with the big book page 193. And this lesson, chapter 5, is going to focus on the central question of how we can actually write percents as fractions and decimals. So let's look at our first set of directions. First set of directions have us with write the percent as a fraction or a mixed number. First thing we're always going to want to take into consideration, or we're going to want to have when converting a percent into a fraction form, is that we always want to use or have a whole number percent. Okay? So we look at example 6. Example 6 has 17%. Percents are ratios that compare a value to 100. So if I have 17%, then I am looking at the fraction of 17 over 100. I do not have to reduce this fraction because there is no common factor between 17 and 100. Okay. Let's take a look at example 7 now. I'm looking at 20%. I'm going to take that 20 and I'm going to write it over 100. All percents are out of 100. And then I'm going to notice that I can reduce 20 and 100. They do share common factors. Common factors would be a 2, they share a 4, a 5, 10, and a 20. So I'm going to actually jump to a pretty big common factor because I know 20 is going to both. And this is actually going to give me a reduced answer of 1/5. So I can go ahead and place that on the line. Alright, now we're looking at example 8. One thing I notice about example 8 is that I have a percent that is greater than 100. Now, we can still follow the same steps that we followed for example 6 and 7. So I'm going to take this 125, I'm going to write it over 100. I'm going to notice that I have a top-heavy mixed number, so I'm going to dump and divide. So I'm going to divide 100 into 125. 100 goes into 125 one full time. Multiply, subtract down, I got a 25 as a remainder. So when we go ahead and write this as a mixed number, we're going to write this as 1 whole. 25 is your remainder over 100. And then that also reduces down to 1 1/4. What I'd like you to do now is go ahead and pause the video and complete example 9 on your own. Okay, thank you for pausing the video. I'm looking at 355%. I know that 355 is greater than 100%, so I'm going to have a mixed number as my answer. I notice that I have 3 in the hundreds place, which means I have 300s. I have 55 in my, in the tens place, basically. So I have 55 over 100. And I can reduce that down by dividing a 5 out of our top and bottom to a final reduced answer of 3 and 11/28. Okay, looking at example 10 now and 11, I notice that I have decimal value percents. If you remember back in the beginning, I told you that we always want to operate with a whole number percent. So I'm going to start the same exact way that we began with questions 6 through 9. I'm going to take and I'm going to write my percent as a value over 100. And then I'm going to decide what I need to multiply. Since my 1 is in the tens place, in order to get this to be a whole number, I need to multiply by 10. And I'm going to create an equivalent fraction, so I'm going to multiply the top and bottom both by 10, and that's going to get me a value of a fraction of 1, because I bounced it 1 space to the right, over 1,000. Final answer, 1/1000. Okay, running the same process here on number 11, I'd like you to go ahead and pause the video, figure out your multiplier, and go ahead and write your fraction for 2.5%. Okay, thank you for pausing the video. Here are the steps that we'd want to work through. We're going to write our percent over 100. We're going to notice that we need to have a multiplier of 10 because I need to bounce it one space to the right, so we're going to make our equivalent fraction times 10. And I'm going to get an answer of 25 over 1,000. Now, 25 over 1,000 can be reduced down. I can divide out a 25 from both of them to get a final answer of 1 over 40. Okay, now we're going to continue down to the bottom part of the page where we have a new set of directions. And now we're going to take our percent and we are going to write it as a decimal. There's one rule that always applies when we're transferring a number that's in a percent form into a decimal form. We will always take and divide our percent by 100. And this is something you can use your calculator for, so I'm encouraging you to use your calculator for this. So I'm going to take my percent of 89% and I'm going to divide it by 100 in the calculator. And you'll notice that you get an answer of 0.89. Okay. Some things that go along with this that are some good things that you can make mental notes of is the fact that 89% is over 100. If you were to take 89 hundredths and write it as a decimal, then you would know that you would end up with 89 hundredths as your answer. It's another way to look at it. All right. Now, I would like you to go ahead on your own, and I would like you to go ahead and complete 13 and 14 on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and work through questions 13 and 14. Thank you. You should have work that is very similar to the work that you see to the left here, but we are looking at answers of 0.30 for 13 and 0.02 for 14. Moving down to question 15, I notice that I have a percent that is greater than 100, but that's not going to change my thought process here like it did on the previous work here. Still going to take the 122 and I'm going to divide it by 100. When I do this, that decimal point is going to bounce 2 spaces to the left, and I'm going to end up with an answer of 1.22. Please go ahead and complete 16 and 17 on your own by pausing the video. Okay, thank you for pausing the video. Just to double check some answers here, you should have ended up with a 0.35 here, and you should have ended up with a 0.0633 for question 17. Now, moving down to 18, we have a word problem. About 21.6% of the population of Canada speaks French. Write 21.6% as a decimal. I would take the 21.6% and divide it by 100 to get a final answer of 2 spaces to the left, 0.216. Please go ahead and complete question 19 on your own. Pause the video, and then I will come back and share the answer with you. Okay. Thank you. Georgia Ann completed 60% of her homework assignments. Write the portion of her homework she still needs to complete as a fraction. Alright, so in this problem, we got to look at what the 60% represents. In this case, the 60% goes with the amount of work that was completed. The question wants us to write a fraction where we actually have to identify the homework she still needs to complete. So if she's completed 60%, then that means 40% equals the incompleted work. So therefore, I have to take my 40% and write that in fraction form, which is 40 over 100. Reduces down. I can divide out my tens to get 4/10. I can divide out my 20s and end up with a final reduced answer of 2/5. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I would like you to go ahead and make sure that these questions are completed in your big book. Bring them to class with you on Monday, and we will build on this lesson in class. Thank you.